All right. How's everybody doing? So, little update here on the quest for VA disability rating. I don't think this is going to necessarily work out. I'm still going for it. Um, I had three things that I went after, which was the tinnitus, which they're not doing anything about. They rated me for 10% hearing loss. They denied my ankle instability issues and stuck with what happened when I got out, which was that it was a pre-existing condition, which was a paper they made me sign. We'll get into that in a minute. Then the other thing is this PTSD thing, but which was really just about being pushed to the point where I took advantage of a way to get out at that time. I was 19 years old. I was a kid. And how that screwed with me for decades afterwards. Now, I'm just going to say this straight up. Goof on me all you want. It's fine. I got to goof on myself about it to a certain extent because I'm looking at my records. What happened was I never really sat down to read everything. I had them in 2007, 2008-ish. Well, in 2000, I went to MEPS again and passed that whole physical to go into the Navy Seabees. And then I chose not to do that. My dad died. I had a girlfriend at the time that wasn't into it. So 2000, 2001. So I walked away from that. And then in 2007, 2008, I had a friend who was doing provisional reconstruction teams in Afghanistan. And he tried to get me into his unit. We rode motorcycles together, both from Jersey and all that. And I went to talk to them, and they liked me. I had all my original paperwork at the time, my original ASFAB scores and all that. And they were going to give me a nice little package where they were going to give me E4 to start off with, and a signing bonus thing. And they were basing that on my knowledge of construction and whatnot. And my prior Marine Corps service. And if you were a Marine and you later want to go back in, you can pretty much waltz back into any other branch of the service. I have a re-enlistment code for the Marine Corps that says I can't do it because of the pre-existing condition. Now, I had surgery in the late 90s, like 96, mid to late 90s, where I blew my ankle out on a movie set, and I had that surgically reconstructed. Jumping up now till recently, when I first went to the VA just to get a military driver's license and all this came out, everybody was telling me, dude, that's like a PTSD thing. You should talk to somebody about that, this, that, the other thing. So I started jumping through these hoops just to see. And that's when the guy told me that I should include my medical records if I have any about surgery since then. So they want to tie it to the damage that happened to me while I was in the Corps. Okay. So just to try to catch up to speed, I'll put a link below to how I got out of the Marine Corps, which was one of my Sunday night chats where I talk about all the crazy nonsense that went on. When I tried to do the Army thing, I went through my records. I had to get my records. They wouldn't get them for me. I had to get them for them, which was a weird thing, and it took a while. And when the records came, my paperwork said that I got out because of my right ankle. It had been my left ankle that I had surgically corrected, so they said they wouldn't take me. And that was a real bummer for me because I had this plan. And I'm going to work myself up now. I'm going to go back in time now and work myself up to that point, what was going on in my mind at that time. So, excuse me. I'll put this somewhere. Stay. Somebody laughed at this, something I said the other day. I have such a commanding presence that inanimate objects obey my commands. So jumping back now to being 19 years old in 1986 at Seal Beach, Naval Weapons Station right here in California. Real crap duty. The rumor even at the time was that Seal Beach had the highest rate of NJPs or office hours. That's getting busted. Marines getting in trouble. Out of the entire Marine Corps. And there was only about 300 Marines there. Now, I saw that with my own eyes. I experienced what I experienced, which was garbage. And since then, I talked to other guys that were there, and some guys who were there after me, who were in the Navy, who know all this stuff. And you guys will know when if you watch those videos, a lot of other ancillary stuff was happening at the same time. We had these NIS guys undercover there because Marines had broken into a bunker and stole these drugs. And Red Cell came in, Richard Marsenko. That was his last mission. You guys should look up Red Cell, Seal Beach. You can watch the whole thing. They kidnapped a civilian security guard, took him off to a hotel off base, and beat the crap out of him for like a day or something. And there's behind the scenes information that I'm privy to, that other people that were at Seal Beach are privy to, that's not mentioned in that documentary, which was the drugs that were on that base that got stolen by Marines. How do I know that? Well, I had gotten busted and I had a job in the chow hall at the time, because that's what they do. They treated the chow hall as punishment for you because it's crappy duty. I mean, you got to be in there like 4 o'clock in the morning. You're not getting any sleep. You're just cleaning crap and doing the logbook all day. People, it's just boring and long hours, and it just sucks. So I was in there first thing in the morning, and there was 3 or 4 Marines from another section, and I didn't know them well enough to know what section. There was 3 sections there at the time, and I was in second section at the time. Sergeant Zamora was the section leader, and I heard what they were saying, and they were talking about how they just broke into all these drugs and drove them over to the fence line at Westminster Boulevard and threw all these drugs over the fence line to another Marine waiting with a truck. Now, I didn't say anything to anybody because at that time you didn't want to be a rat. Now, bringing that up briefly, I was a pretty good Marine. I mean, I have a lot, there's a lot, looking back on it, I can see things now with hindsight in 2020. I understand the whole situation a lot better. So, first of all, yes, as a kid, I had a few injuries here and there. I had corrective shoes when I was a kid and all that. But I still played sports and everything. And I did pass the Marine Corps physical. And I did get through boot camp and infantry school and all, Paris Island and then Pendleton. So I had like both worlds. I had the swamps and the sand fleas and the red ants and everything else. And then I had the mountains out here, you know. And, but boot camp, infantry school, there were injuries that I sustained that clearly were pretty damaging to me. That made any other issue I may have had far worse. But at that time, I never got an MRI when I was in the Corps or anything. So just putting that out there. And I totally screwed up when I first got to Seal Beach. I'd only just got there. I was unpacking, and there was this guy who's dead now. His name was Kazuhiro Norup. So he was half Japanese, half Irish. His dad was a lifer in the Marine Corps, combat photographer, Korea, Vietnam, maybe World War II, Korea and Vietnam. He was an old guy, really cool guy. He liked me. At any rate, this dude and this other guy, and I think it was Gabrich, but I could be wrong on that. If I'm wrong, I'll have to correct that. The names now I know because I found them in the records. And these 2 dudes took me out. I was 19 to this bar. This Irish bar is still there on Seal Beach Boulevard there, downtown Seal Beach. And we just got shit-faced drunk. Not making any excuses. I'm just saying, as a lesson, you hang out with idiots doing dumb stuff, and if you're inebriated, you're going to make bad choices and probably get in trouble. And that's what happened. So we got hammered, tore that place up. Those guys were paying for everything. The next thing I knew, they're like, come, they took me in the bathroom. They had called some girl, and the 4 of us were in a bathroom stall. We snorted cocaine off the back of a toilet, which is not something that I would normally do. I wasn't a druggy guy. I had been exposed to that stuff in high school. It was the 1980s. But I was not a big drug guy. So I guess the mindset was, I'm drunk. They're doing it. Everybody else is doing it. You do it. You're stupid. You're just dumb at 19. Poor judgment on everybody's part there. To make matters worse, they created a big scene, didn't tip the waitress. We left. The waitress came outside, started a fight. So I remember all that. Not only that, I met a cop there that day who gave me his business card, and I still have it. Like, he took me aside. It was a weird scenario that was going on there, and I don't understand it all. Like, the more I look back on it, there are these weird people that pop in and out. I feel like there was a lot of other stuff going on there, which maybe I'll touch on in this video. But at any rate, We go back to the base, and probably somebody called and said, "Hey, we got these Marines here making a scene, and we're pretty sure they were doing drugs in the bathroom." And I think that's why they did the piss test on base, which was like 2 days later. So these other two Marines, they were Lance Corporals. They had been in the Corps already for a while. I don't think that was their first duty station. They might have come out of the fleet. And because they knew people, they got somebody else to pee for them. Well, I didn't know anybody. I was a boot. And so I popped on the piss test. I'm making this story much shorter because there's a lot that went on even during that. It wasn't good. And that was not a good thing. So I got punished. 6 months loss of rank to busted the private. According to my records, they were supposed to punish me for 2 months, but they actually gave me 3 months of punishment. And during that time, I just got really screwed with, as you would imagine. Labeled as a druggie, all these things. Anything that went wrong on base, it was me. And I was always just getting shit on for everything. If there was a group of us doing something, there was a time policing up cigarette butts, that sort of thing. Something wasn't right, I got shit for it. And so just a briefly synopsis of like kind of a few of the things that went down. I just got pushed. There was this incident where you'll see in the video that I'll put the link to where they, I guess it was like 6 months later, which is great because I looked at the records and I know what the dates are now because I got a thing in the mail the other day saying that they denied the ankles, they're giving me the 10% for the hearing, and then the PTSD is being deferred, and then boom, I get a thing in the mail, they want me to redo the paperwork because I didn't do it the way they wanted me to, and I wrote them a story of trying to explain what happened. Because it's funny, like the paperwork, your records aren't indicative of everything that happens to you. It's not like the command is going, yeah, we fucked with them, 4 times a week, every week for 8 months on purpose. Like they're not saying that. It's not in the records. They're just showing you what you did. If you went to the doctor, things like that. So anyhow, you can watch that other video. But the point is they put me through this crazy point one time where they came into my room and thought I had marijuana in the room, and it was just a blade of grass out of the lawn, and it led to this whole thing where they just screwed with me to the point where I blew a gasket. Like I literally lost my mind. I was pushed too far. I yelled at my commander, who was a major. I was a private, and I was right. So nothing happened to me because of that. I went into his office. I was like, with all due respect, sir, this is bullshit, blah, blah, blah. He bullshitted me again. I went down his throat on it. And then he's told me to walk out of his office. And that's when my mind snapped. That's when I lost it completely and just went crazy. I went down, and my whole formation, the whole section was in formation. And Sergeant Zamora was down there. And so I run down there, and I'm yelling his name, and I take him behind everybody, and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs like, I will kill somebody, and it's going to be, the blood's going to be on your hands and all this other stuff if you guys don't stop pushing me. And the next day I got my rank back. And I know that was 6 months after I got busted based on what I saw in my records the other day. So at least I could find that date approximately. And after that, things were going pretty good. And by that time, I had proven that I wasn't a druggie. And I had nothing to do with these drugs that got stolen on the base and everything. And this was after the Red Cell incident. And then they put me in what was called third section. And third section had a reputation of being a lot of shitbirds. And looking back on it, what I was told was I was put there because I was a good Marine. So they put me in with a couple of guys that they weren't sure about, figuring I would rub off on them. But it had the opposite effect. Like I was a young kid at the time, and I was always, looking for the wrong people to hang out with because it was fun. Bad idea. So, and at the same time, what was happening, which was I think really the biggest part of my problem, was I was little when I went in the Corps. And, I got out of boot camp at like 150 pounds. I remember I went down to 148 pounds with a 36-inch chest. I came home for a month, and I went to infantry school out in Pendleton. I was supposed to get sea duty. That's in my paperwork. I had guaranteed security forces sea duty. But the sea duty class wasn't opening, so I ended up at Seal Beach, which was just a horrible thing. And I have to say that now, looking back on it, like bad behavior on a base with people getting busted and everything else and all the bad stuff that was going on is indicative of a poor command. Everything trickles from the top down. And the only way I'm looking at it, I can't believe that the Marine Corps knew about or would have been okay with drugs from LA County and Orange County from drug busts being stored at a naval weapons station being guarded by Marines. I can't imagine the Commandant of the Marine Corps was signed off on that. I think that that must have been a deal. I'm guessing here. Must have been a deal between the commander and the mayors of these towns or the chiefs of police or whatever. Somebody worked some kind of deal there. And I think that that's what was the pressure cooker was going now. I know a little something about this because later in life I was kind of involved with mobsters and whatnot. Collections and things like this I did in North Jersey and all that back in the day. And then when John Gotti got arrested, a few of the guys I know, well, two of the guys I knew for sure disappeared, disappeared. And then I disappeared myself. That's when I came out here to LA. But I understand this thing where people are doing stuff that's wrong, they get caught, everybody else starts scrambling to cover up the mess. That's what we're seeing in this in politics now. The media defending poor decisions, the border, all the stuff that's been going on here. So reflecting back on it, hindsight's 20/20, but I can see now why they were just getting rid of people at the time, and I was one of those people. Now, a month or so ago, when I went and for the evaluation for my ankles, the guy was cool. He had been a corpsman for 10 years, became a brain surgeon, happens to be Mike Tyson's older brother. As soon as I sat down, he was like, "I'm looking at your records, dude. It looks like they railroaded you." That's what he's reading. I'm like, that's exactly what happened. We had this great conversation. I explained to him, he's like, "Don't worry, I'm going to fill this out right, take care of you. You got a whole record of you getting injured." And then I get the paperwork back saying it's been denied. So, okay, I'm not sure what I want to do now. We're going to go back and forth. This is like a Tarantino movie. I'm jumping from present day to back to 1986. I apologize, but hopefully you can follow this. So, let's jump back to 86. So what happened was my body changed a lot. Within a few months, I went from probably 150-ish, 160 pounds to 185 pounds with a 48-inch chest. And we had a PFT. And I remember this distinctly because I was getting screwed with. My life, I was just everything was miserable, just one thing after another, getting screwed with nonstop. And we ran this PFT, and I had this thing in my mind, like it was a bad day for me, and I was just thinking, I don't even want to be here. This is just bullshit. So I, pretty much maxed out my pull-ups and my sit-ups, and that was all fine. And then when we did the run, I was running that real slow to the point where I even remember I stopped and walked a little bit, and everybody else was done, and they drove a truck up to me, like, "What's your problem?" I'm like, "I don't know." And they're like, "All right, we're going to send you to go to the doctor." And when I went to the doctor was super cool with me. It seemed like he knew about me or something too. It was very strange, especially when you look at my records, what you can read there. But he put my ankles on the protractors and he said, "Look, your ankles are beyond the range of normal. If you want to get out, you can get out." And I was like, "No, I don't want to get out of the Marine Corps." All I ever wanted to be was a Marine. I wanted to be a warrior. I had this warrior mentality. I mean, just quickly jumping way back. For those of you who don't know, a lot of you here, my dad was a child soldier during World War II, left home at 9 years old for 4 years, fighting commies and all that. And then I had an uncle that did 2 tours in Vietnam with the Seabees. He was a Seabee, so he was with the Marine Corps. I had my other uncles, my grandfathers, everybody was in the military. And I was kind of bred for it, and that's all I ever wanted to do. I was focused on that. I had a whole plan. What I wanted to do when I got out. I thought I'd stay in for a while, then maybe get out. Then I would do this and that. And I get there and it's a bunch of bullshit, which is fine. I understand it now. Nobody tells you back then, like, dude, there's a pretty good chance, depending on where you get stationed, where you could just be screwed with nonstop. If they had just had people that talked real to you, you can make a better decision on things. And there was no advocate at the time. There was nobody I could talk to about what was happening that could help me sort through and make better decisions. But in my records, when I talked to that doctor, you see it. He wrote down there, strongly desires to stay in the Marine Corps, something like that. I didn't want to get out. But he's like, "It's here if you want. If you want to get out, we can get you out." All right. So I go back to base, and now I'm on light duty. And then there's this next incident that happens, which really, looking back on it, does seem like a setup. This is all in the video, so I'll go over it briefly. But what happened was I go on post one day. You got to inspect the truck before you get in it. Write down all the dings and scratches and whatnot all over the vehicle. And they were giving me a vehicle that had bald tires. Tires are so bald, all four of them, where the steel, like the steel belted radials, you know, the steel parts, it's like wire strand, is poking out of the rubber on the tires. That's how bald. I've never seen tires this bald before, beyond bald. And I said to the guy who was like a corporal or something, I was like, I can't take this. He's like, take the truck. We'll send you 4 new tires. Excuse me, you can change the tires while you're on post. So I take the truck and I go to this area called the train workers area. And there was this big stack of railroad rails, immovable objects, solid steel. And I'm coming around this turn and I hit a mud puddle. And I lost control of the truck, and I did no tread on the tires. When I hit the brakes, the truck just hydroplaned. I lost control. Like I'm trying to turn the wheel, but it's not doing anything, and bam, I just hit this thing. So they come down and they're threatening me. Again, I've been crapped on this whole time. There's a bunch of incidents that I mentioned in the other video, so I hope you guys will watch that. It's far more entertaining. It's about an hour, 15 minutes long or something. So now they're telling me we're going to take this out of your pay. You're going to lose months of pay. All this stuff. We're going to put you in the chow. All these crazy things. And I'm like, no, you're not. And there's a guy with a camera there taking pictures. Hey, come here. Take pictures of these tires. Make sure you take pictures of the tires. It's on the sheets, on the ditto when I took the truck for post. So I covered my ass there. Quick thinking from Jersey, street kid, you know, living alone since I was a kid, which was another problem for me. I was kind of more mature and my brain worked in a different way. Like a lot of kids go there. They're kids. They're like, it's their first time being away from home and everything. And so they can fit into this. That's why the Marine Corps and all branches of service goes after the young, you know, like you're fit enough and dumb enough to accept all this nonsense and just do it. But my brain was always working. Like I was always looking at the Corps like, why is this being done this way? Why can't we do it this way? Wouldn't this be more efficient? That is not the way to be in the Marine Corps, right? Especially back then. Maybe today it's better. I hope so. So what happened was to make an example out of me, and also because they couldn't get me one way, now they're going to get me another way, which was they took the trucks away from everybody, made the entire base walk. Well, the thing is I just came back from the doctor. I'm on light duty. I don't have to walk. Are you putting this together now? Like, they set that up, man. That's like what they do to Trump, right? They say all these horrible things and all these scare attacks and all these crazy people come out of the woodwork and try to shoot him. That's exactly the position I was in. I was set up to be this dude, all this trouble, everything else. They take the trucks away from everybody. Now everybody hates my guts. Now I'm in a really tough spot. Fortunately, I had a couple tight pals there. So I end up getting this post one day, and which I used to get all the time. Jumping back again to when I first got busted, I just knew everything there was to know. 3 months of being punished. So I was on that base. You know, that I knew everything. I knew all the knowledge. You couldn't trip me up. My 10 code was perfect. 10 code's when you're talking on the radio. Everything. I just knew everything. My room was always squared away. I never got in any other trouble. It was that one-time incident was all it was. And they just kept pushing me to try to break me. And of course, again, the drug issue had happened. And I'm assuming maybe they thought I had something to do with it because I had gotten busted for it. And now these drugs got stolen. I don't know. Maybe they thought I knew somebody. I was in the chow hall when those guys were talking about it. They were ratted out by a guy. We had a baker there, a Marine Corps baker, who told everybody he was going to get embassy duty, which we knew couldn't happen because of his MOS. And then he disappeared. He left saying, I'm going to go get embassy duty. That was the deal he made to rat those guys out. Well, I'm sitting there too. They probably thought, why isn't this guy ratting anybody out? You understand what I'm saying? Looking back on it, 2020, hindsight. At any rate, I had all this good knowledge anyhow, but now I'm on light duty. Everybody else is walking, and I still get this good post. And it was an incident that took place with this guy who was a contract corporal. You enlist for 6 years, you get corporal in 18 months. And much bigger man than me. And he was just giving me a bunch of crap in this radio room with a time lock door. If the door closes, it doesn't open for 6 hours. So we never closed it. We always left it ajar. And I was doing his job. I was on the radio. I was filling out the logbooks, getting up, doing the board, doing everything. He's sitting there eating a sandwich with his feet up. Phone rings. He tells me to answer the phone. I'm like, no, you answer the phone. He starts giving me lip. One thing led to another. He started talking smack, like he wanted to kick my ass. And again, now, I had already been pushed so many times and screwed with. And where now people say you got a short fuse. I had no fuse. I went from like 0 to I'm ready to rip somebody's friggin' throat out, stick my thumbs through their eyeballs, and crack their head open on the floor like a melon in a fraction of a second. And that's what happened. And I went after him. It wasn't good. I launched him. I stepped into him, whoop, bam, with 2 arms right under his pecs into his chest as hard as I could. Just caved him in, fell up against the wall. I go like this. I'm coming at him. Next thing I know, somebody's got me in this half Nelson, and it's this old salty corporal. And he takes me out of there, throws me in a truck. He's like, that's it. You're done. You're going to have the chow hall for the remainder of your time here. And, he's just making all these threats to make my life miserable, as if it wasn't already miserable. I was already questioning why the hell I was still there. Why am I putting up with this crap? Because it was barracks duty, man. There was nothing to do other than spit shine your boots, perfect uniform, and get screwed with. There was a lot of training. That was the good part. I looked at it, so it was the M16, the Mossberg 870 Wingmaster, the 45. It was nonstop with that stuff, constantly training with that. And we did tactics, breaching tactics. We were doing hostage tactics. I even got captured once as a hostage, and so it was nonstop training, that was the only good part about it. But there was nothing to do there other than really get in trouble. So at any rate, I just went through this BS now with the truck, all the lies with that, trying to railroad me with that. I wiggled my way out of that. So I was kind of smarter than they were to a certain extent. Like my brain worked really fast. And so now here I am being threatened with this, and they brings me in to talk to this warrant officer, this woman we had there. She didn't like me. And which is weird because I'm a pretty charming guy with the ladies, Anyhow, that's when she hits me with, do you even want to be here? And I'm like, well, I don't want to be here, but I didn't have an option. It was either stay here and deal with getting screwed with for however, another year or whatever, or take advantage of this thing that the doctor said, because that's what was going on in my brain at that point. So I went back to the doc, and he's like, well, which I forgot this part of it. I found this in my records. This is why I think it's going to be very hard for me to get anything, because I wrote a statement where I came up with a few incidents when I was a kid to support the fact that I had a pre-existing condition. Totally forgot that. But once I saw the record, here's how I know there's some BS in there, because the first incident is like when I was 12, I tore ligaments or something, and I was in a cast. That's not what happened. But I remember what happened. I got hit by a car when I was 12 on my bicycle. Guy just drove right into me. And I don't remember what happened to my ankle, but I was in a cast at that point. So when I read that in my records, like, oh, that's not true. I mean, it's partially true, but then I had this whole remembrance of talking to this doctor and him going, you got to come up with a few things so we could say it was pre-existing. And to get you out, which is weird that they would do that, because maybe it wasn't him, maybe it was the warrant officer, but I know that I was kind of coerced in that, because she did make me, she said, you have to sign this. That's what it was, which is a statement saying that I'm getting out due to prior existing condition before I went in. And that made it, and the way she worded it at the time, and I didn't care about listening to anything. I was so angry, upset, demoralized over the whole situation. I just remember her saying, you sign this, you're out. It's medical, general under honorable conditions. It's like an honorable discharge 6 months later. I just remember her spitting all this stuff out, and my brain going, whatever it takes, man. I'm out of here. You're going to let me out like that? Fine. So I took advantage of this thing. Now, already being depressed and upset, and after everything I had gone through there for the year I was there, getting out that way was a blow to me psychologically. I didn't understand it at the time. For decades, I was really like I was suicidal. I don't like admitting this, by the way, but it's the truth. I had an epiphany many years later, understanding it. I remember. So there was a few times where I literally had a gun in my mouth. I'm not proud of that because I was so unhappy. And it all goes back to this bullshit. And not even the truth is, now that I can look at my records and kind of understand what was going on and kind of sift through it all as an adult with all this experience, I look back on it and I realize I wasn't even that mad at the core that much. I was mad at myself for making the first mistake I made and then taking the easy way out and not being able to fulfill my commitment. That's what bothered me the most. And I remember one day being real upset, and I put it together. I was upset that I was still alive because I thought it was like that Lieutenant Dan thing in Forrest Gump. It's not that I had somebody from my family that died in every war, but I wanted to have that experience of going to war and doing these other things and then becoming like a professional soldier so I could help out other people around the planet. Because I grew up hearing all these stories as a little kid from Europe, war-torn Europe, and what happened during and after the war there. And I know that there's evil in the world, and I wanted to be the guy that defends the meek from the bullies. That's what was always in my brain. That's what I wanted. That's why I went to the Marine Corps. I wanted the toughest training I could get. I had all these things in my mind, and I was just demoralized and depressed, and I took the easy way out, and that's what really screwed with my mind. And yeah, I remember this epiphany one afternoon in my apartment, just like I'm upset because I'm still alive. I'm still here. And I didn't all that shit. Like it just all hit me. But it wasn't until after 2010 when I got on Facebook and I remembered my friend Ralph Pietropaula, who he and I were really tight at Seal Beach. We were in infantry school together. Me, him, and this guy Yobes, this other guy Kingman. We all got there at the same time. We all were at the same Alpha Company at San Onofre, Camp Pendleton for infantry school. And me and Ralph and Rich, who was also my bunkmate in boot camp and in an infantry school, and then we got stationed together in the same section at Seal Beach. We refer to each other by our laundry numbers from boot camp. I was 60, he was 59, even to this day. He's a great guy. And Ralph was cool. And they made Ralph an E4 corporal. And when that happened, Ralph turned into a douchebag. Could never understand why that was. Looking back on it, of course, I understand. But then after 2010, I got on Facebook, and I had been told that Ralph had died in a helicopter crash. And I was going through some old pictures, and I had pictures of him and great memories of the guy. And we all knew his name and how to spell it because Ralph was older than us, and he had a driver's license from New Jersey that didn't have a driver's license picture on it. So this is the 80s. You can get into a place without a picture ID, out-of-state license, And you had to know how to, like, you go in, somebody goes, well, spell that name. And so the way Ralph would teach you how to spell his name was Pietropaula, like Mickey Mouse, right? So that's never going away, man. That's burned into my brain. So I remembered how Ralph Pietropaula, Facebook. He pops up. The guy's still alive. I had no idea. I reach out to him, and that creates this whole crazy scenario now where we're both flooded with these memories from our past. I'll tell you how effed up Seal Beach was. We were doing a nighttime assault and breach on a bunker for training purposes. We all got flak jackets on and everything. This stupid stuff. Ralph's in the prone position in the road. This guy comes down in a truck and runs him over. And he runs him over, and everybody goes, stop, stop, stop. And the guy hits the brakes, and the rear tire stops on Ralph's back. Like this. And we're like, you're on Ralph. And the guy puts it in reverse and peels out on Ralph's back and then runs over him again with the front tire. And Ralph was a stocky dude. And again, he had the flak jacket on, thank God, because nothing really happened to him from that. But that was such a crazy thing to see right here. From me to that parked car is where it happened. I watched that whole thing go down. So Ralph and I are talking out all the stuff that went down there. And the next thing you know, he's apologizing to me about how he treated me because he was told to treat me that way. So I have a first-hand account of an NCO being told to treat another Marine shitty. That kind of backs up a little bit of my story there. If anybody else watching this was at Seal Beach Naval Weapons Station in 1986, particularly if you were in second section, I would love to talk to you. So, yeah. And Ralph went into the fleet. He was in for 12 years, and I thought it was 5, but he had, I believe it was 3 helicopter crashes that he survived. And he survived helicopter crashes where other guys didn't, where guys died. And I think they all happened overseas. I know one of them, big one, happened in Korea, where a bunch of guys died, and he walked away from it. Ralph's a badass. He's a paramedic out in Beaumont. 10 cuts right through it. So, talking to Ralph, I'm rehashing it, and I'm telling him I'm upset about everything, and this is after 2010 sometimes, probably 12 years ago or so, when we reconnected. And he was so cool. We're cool now. We talk every once in a while. And he's like, dude, I know. And he said to me, he's like, that was the worst. Every Marine I've talked to that was at Seal Beach, who then went into the fleet afterwards, told me that was the only place in the Marine Corps that they ever saw like that the command was total shit. Again, the shit comes from the top down. This guy, Major Tom Hauser, something was up with that guy. So, screw that guy. I have no... Because he was part of screwing me over. Like, he knew. He was in my room that day when that gay predator Corporal Wright, and Sergeant Zamora were holding a blade of grass saying this is marijuana, that he could use that to tear my room apart and berate me and give me a bunch of shit for a couple hours straight. And he was right there. That's a bad leader. That's a shit leader right there. That major should have been like, what are you guys doing? It's a blade of grass. But he went along with it. They were pushing me on purpose for some reason that I still don't understand to this day. So again, watch that video. Link in the description. Anyhow, that's what went down. And so I go home. I'll tell you something happened. I go home. We had one of these recruiters that I was really good friends with, this guy Bressler. But he was your typical recruit. Now, he wasn't there when I signed up. I signed up on Halloween 1984. I enlisted. And those guys, was these 2 other guys. I can't remember their names right now. And then Bressler came in. I was on the delayed entry program. Listed in 84, went in August 26th, 85. And, but Bressler used to come over and party with all the high school girls and everything. And he was telling us all kinds of stories about doing hash, smoking grass laced with hash oil and these tins they buy in the Philippines and hookers. And making the Marine Corps sound like it's nothing but some big party. And I come home after getting out with this medical issue thing. And I went and did something else for 3.5, 4 months that I'm not going to talk about on camera. I had a little bit of a life, And then when I eventually got back down to shore, he shows up. I was living in the same house I lived in my senior year. My buddy George was living in it. 106 F Street, Seaside Park. That little house ain't there anymore. It used to be a little beach bungalow. And this guy shows up. Bressel shows up with a recruit. Or not a recruit, but somebody who's trying to get to sign the papers to go in the Corps. And he comes to me with this kid. Like, I'm still his best friend. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, I was a man at that point. And keep in mind, I was a good, 30 pounds heavier now. Muscle. Bam, a friggin' man. And Bressel was this little guy. And I was so angry with everything. I was angry with the Corps. I was angry with myself. I was angry with him. Because, I had some pretty decent ASVAB scores. they weren't like through the roof, but I was told at the time I could have been a pilot. I could have done any job I wanted in the Marine Corps, and all I wanted to do was be a grunt. I wanted to do 0311. That was it. And I had this one guy, it was a gunnery sergeant. He was a funny guy. He was like, it's hard to describe him. He wasn't like a hard charging Marine, like for a recruiter. The other recruiters were like locked down and really had a presence about them. This guy would have his dress blues on with the top button undone, stuff like that. I forget his name, but his name's on the paperwork when I enlisted. And he partied with us. I got pictures of these guys partying with underage kids, man, drinking beer and everything. And anyhow, this guy shows up, and I had a look on my face. I'm looking at him. I'm so angry. Where I know I had a look on my face like I wanted to rip his head off. I just wanted to beat the crap out of him. And he saw, as soon as he saw it, he recognized it, and he grabbed this kid by the shoulder and spun him around and turned around, and both of them walked away from me. I never saw him again. And yeah, and then I just was living my life. But I'm living my life in Jersey where, there's all these rumors now. Why didn't I do my full 4 years? And I got to explain that shit to people forever. It was a thing. And eventually it wasn't such a big deal. But if you know me, you know that the Marine Corps was a big part of my life, and I never let that go. And I have this thing in my head where I feel like I still owe the Corps another 2+ years or whatever it is. And that's part of the reason why I still stay pretty fit. I still do pull-ups and everything else. I wish I could put the rest of my time in. It'll never happen. It's a fantasy. But that's the reason why I tried to get back. I was going to go in the Navy. I was going to do the Army with the provisional reconstruction teams, everything else. I mean, to this day, still. I just feel like obviously, I can't be too hard on myself, again, at 19 years old, not understanding everything and taking that easier way out because I had already been screwed with so much. I didn't think I could put up with another year of it. And really the big thing was, again, looking back on it, I was scared that because of what was happening to my mind at that time, I would have hurt somebody. Like, if you keep pushing me, I am. The next guy who comes at me with bullshit, I'm just going to hurt somebody. And the truth is, after the Corps, that's who I became for a long time. And I did a lot of bad stuff. A lot of bad stuff. And I put people in the hospital. Many times. Hurt a lot of people. I was looking for fights, man. I used to go out looking for it. I ended up working, and I'm not a huge guy. 5'9" at that time, 185, 190 pounds. And working as a bouncer in a nightclub, I mean, it was crazy, man. All the stuff that I did, getting involved with the mobsters and everything else. I basically was trying to kill myself through behavior for a long time. And then again, with the gun thing. And then, but even at those times, I sat there, I was like, I felt like killing yourself was like a cheap way out. And I was a little bit frightened of the unknown, like what would happen if I killed myself. Like, I felt like that was just the wrong. I remember being there, that close to it, and just thinking, I don't believe it's lights out. And so I felt, no, I got to stick this out. I got to tough this out. I got to tough it out. And I'm glad I did, because I'm happy now. But I didn't get happy until a little over 7 years ago, on my 50th birthday. I had this incident where I had a death experience, And ever since then, I've been a different human being, more positive-minded, happier. I was already starting to kind of help people out because of the social, like for me, social media has been a positive. I've helped other people out, and other people help me out to a certain extent, and it's a nice connection because I've been alone since I was 14, never got married, didn't have any kids, all that. So social media was a thing. It was an outlet for me, which is why I understand a lot of people that are here watching me, because a lot of people that watch me are, I'm assuming, probably alone too. I don't know. But at any rate, I just wanted to give you guys the heads up. I don't think the way my records are that there's really much of a chance I can get anything else. But when I got that paperwork in the mail saying that it was denied, the ankle thing was denied, I called my buddy who was a combat veteran, badass, became a special operator, cool dude. He didn't get 100% disability rating, but he got the number of a guy's in Texas. His name's Jeremy. I believe he's a former Marine, and he used to be a rater for the VA. Rater, like rater, Rater. He would rate people based on their stories and their records to give them a disability rating. And he said that guy helped him to get 100% disability, which he deserved. So I called the guy, and we spoke on the phone for a while. And he's like, I don't know how much I could do for you. Probably not much. But I told him about the YouTube channel, and he perked up a little bit. And I said to him, I'd love to interview you, not about me necessarily, but about he wants to do it because this is a guy that helps veterans to get what they deserve. Their disability ratings based on reality. And he's got a lot of stories about how the VA screws you over, which is very strange. And we talked about this. I have another friend who did almost 28 years in the Corps. He was an E8. And he told me over a decade ago that, because he was serving with Air Force guys and Army guys, and he'd been out of the country in other countries doing stuff. And he told me that the Air Force trains their people to fill out the paperwork right so they can get 100% disability. So if people in the Air Force are able to finagle 100% disability, and then you got guys, combat veterans, that served all over the place and did effed up stuff, saw all kinds of crazy stuff, have hearing loss and all these other issues. Tinnitus is a real thing, man. All these things. And then the VA is going to fight you on that? So what this guy does is he's an advocate for you. He goes through your records, tells you how to fill stuff out correctly so you can get the maximum. So what we'll do at some point, I'd like to do it with him in person, and there's a good chance in April I'll be driving across the country if I have the money, and that's not looking good right now. I'm pretty poor again, and no real work coming in at the moment. So I got to rectify that. But when that happens, I'll sit down with him when I do that road trip, and we'll do an interview, and I want him to let you guys know what really goes on with the VA and what it's like for him to deal with these people that are just trying to get what they deserve. Another helicopter. I don't know what it sounds like to you, but it sounds like I have to scream in here for you to hear me over that. That's why I'm pausing. At any rate, Jeremy seems like a nice guy, and I just emailed him this morning. I spent Sunday afternoon or Saturday printing my records. Took me almost 2 hours. It cost me almost $50 or something to print everything out so I can mail that to him. And then he'll get back to me and tell me what he thinks. And hopefully, I wrote into him, I said, hey man, see this as a challenge. Anything you do but more than what I've got, it will be icing on the cake, and that'll be fine with me. But let's at least try it. But the more important thing is getting to know him and being pals with him and doing an interview with him, because I think that the knowledge that he could put out there for you would be beneficial. And you might even, if you're in the situation I was in or something similar, reach out to him, and you guys can work a deal with him, and then he can help you maybe get your disability rating up. I don't know. It has to be legit. The thing with me is I'm not lying about anything. Everything I'm telling you is the truth. It's how it happened. It sounds weird to people. It's so atypical, my experience, everything. And there's so many other weird experiences that happened that weren't necessarily bad or the Corps screwing with me, just very strange, bizarre things. I really believe a great idea for a show would have to be on cable, would be a goof on the Marine Corps at Seal Beach in particular in the 1980s, a period 1980s story. I think it could get made because it would put the Marine Corps and the Navy and all that not in a good light. So lefties, wokeists, they would love this shit. And it could all be true. Every word of it could be, they could fictionalize some of it, but it could be real happenings. And you could talk to people that were there. And I know a bunch of these people. I know 2 guys that got dishonorable discharges from there. that were good Marines. Like, people were forced out of the Corps at Seal Beach. A lot of underhanded, bizarre, crazy stuff went on there. On top of that, just the drunks and all the crazy stuff going on. There's so much crazy. It's unbelievable. But if you remember, when I was a kid, there was a show, Gomer Pyle, right? Jim Neighbors, which was a, if you were in the Marines and you're watching that, you're like, this is not a good representation of the Marine Corps. Really, that guy, that goofball dude, didn't make any sense. We could do a modern version of that, and it could be real. And it would only need to be so many seasons for you to get that picture, and it would be fun because of the music and the clothing and everything else. And all the bullshit, man. It would be unbelievable. People would not believe it, and it would all be the truth. And tying it in with Red Cell, with Richard Marsanko, and all that stuff that went on. And I got pictures of some of these guys. I got a picture of this Navy SEAL on all fours with long blonde hair and a mustache over a briefcase. We took him off that and held a shotgun to him, handcuffed, and the briefcase exploded. I don't have the briefcase exploding on camera. I just have a still photo, a couple still photos of him getting caught and arrested, which was interesting because they told us that we did a good job capturing the Navy SEALs. I see a hair here, it's bugging me. I'll try to ignore it for now. It's like an Irish pennant, you know. They told us that we passed the security thing, and nobody passes the security thing. Red Cell broke the security everywhere they went. So you know that there was BS going on there. At any rate, that's the story. That's what's happening. That's the truth. And I'm just letting you guys know, because every time I mention something, I do a video on what's going on with me with the VA and whatnot. I get a lot of caring people. I do appreciate it. You guys care. Trying to tell me to do this or do that or stick with it or fight it. I'm just letting you know, this is going to be a tough one. I hope I can get something out of it, but, you know, it's a tough one. I wrote the paper. I gave them a few instances to let them believe that I had this prior existing condition that was so serious I shouldn't have been let in the first place. And that's really not true. But it was at that time when I was, again, in this mental state where I was just so damaged by it that I was given a way out, and I took it. And then that has been what's been haunting me all these decades later. That's what that is. I'm over it now, for the most part. Now it's more like, I feel like I guess I just wanted the world to know about it, and I have this platform to do it, and now you know. You have to feel, you can goof on me about this and make fun of me and tell me I'm a piece of crap or I'm a wuss or whatever you want. It's fine. This is just my experience. I'm not putting this out there for sympathy from anybody. It's just to clear the record. This should be my last video on this subject, period. The only time I let you guys know is if something happens positive down the road where I get something out of it, I'll let you know. Say, oh, well, the VA worked out. Here's what's going on. Let's forget about that now. Other than that, I believe I can now still go to the VA and go to a doctor. That's what I've been told by everybody. I found out you only need 180 days of active duty to qualify to be able to get medical at the VA. So I need to find the time to go over there. There's a place pretty close to me, and get a doctor and get a physical. And I got a hernia that I need to get dealt with. And I haven't really been to a doctor since 1987, other than little stuff that happened to me, my accidents on motorcycles and things like that. And, you know, no physicals or anything. I've had 2 teeth cleanings, you know, in all that time. So at any rate, that's it. I hope you guys get something out of this. It might help somebody. I don't know. But I feel like you guys are like my therapist. Here's what's happening. So that's it. Be kind to one another. Thanks again for being here. You know, tell your friends. Come back again. I'll catch you in the next one.